Hi everyone, Bess McCarty here, Victoria, Kansas, presenting for the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show, a book report group show sponsored by our generic school, the MLM Millionaire Academy, Generic School for Network Marketers. And today the book that we are covering is The Winning with People by John Maxwell. It's an incredible book about how to get along with people, because it said that all problems are really communication problems, aren't they? So this is a golden book for this, comparable to How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. So he actually John Maxwell quotes people a lot in this book. Now, John Maxwell is the #1 leadership expert in the world and has written over 100 books about how to lead people, how to be with people, how to be a better person, mate, leader, a business person, everything in life. So would like to share with you today a chapter from this book called The Bob Principle. And this is what John Maxwell says, my little book report for you today. He says that, get back to that chapter, where is it? Okay. When Bob has a problem with everyone, Bob is usually the problem. And he says, he quotes Alexander Pope here, "All seems infected that the infected spy, and all looks yellow to the jaundiced eye." So in other words, I'm thinking he's saying that our lens that we look at, how our eyes are they rose-colored glasses? Are they tinted glasses? And how are we looking at the world? How are we viewing the world? Are we coloring it how we see it, either positive or negative? Very telling. So a question that he says we must ask ourselves is, am I Bob? And John starts out talking a story about a fellow named Billy Martin, who was fired in 1988 from being a manager of the Major League Baseball's New York Yankees. And he said the unusual thing is that this was his 5th time that he was fired. And the history is that Billy Martin had a history of insobriety and fights that kept getting him fired, hired, fired, rehired, and his teams usually won, but it came at a big price for dealing with him. And finally people said, well, you have to approach him just right, or, he said, personally, I would just avoid him. But the interesting thing is that when Billy was asked about this, he said he never saw a problem with himself, with how he behaved. And they said, well, why did you get fired? And he said, I got fired because I'm not a yes man. The world is full of yes men. So he could not see anything in himself that was needing to change about this. And John Maxwell says that, now first John Maxwell talks about dealing with negative people. And then he talks about turning this around, looking at ourselves, which is sometimes the hardest darn thing to do, to really look at ourselves, because it takes a lot of courage. I have been a body-mind therapist, holistic health practitioner, coach, and counselor for over 30 years to do my own personal growth work and then to help other people. And it's not easy to look at ourselves. I know from personal experience. I just had a conversation the other day with my ex, and I thought I was helping him, but really he was helping me to see some things in myself. And I thought, oh shoot, I thought I had that handled years ago. I thought I had grown beyond this pattern, but it's still with me. So I guess I'm always going to be a work in progress. There's always a plus element in all of eternity. There's no such thing as perfection, but I can work toward it. I can improve, my happiness, my life, my relationships every day. So we'll start out talking about how to deal with negative people. And first of all, we need to recognize them. Of course, they might be us, but this is how we might recognize them. Bob, the problem has a problem with everybody, right? Bob is often a problem carrier. He's often a problem finder. Bob is a problem creator. And Bob is a problem receiver, right? Stuff always happens to people like this. So what can we do with negative people? Because we know that it doesn't feel good to be around them, to hear them, to discuss with them. And here's a tip that I learned. And that is when I learned this from my teacher, when you're with a negative person and they accidentally say something positive, when you can catch them saying something positive, stop and ask them about that. Tell me more about that. How was that? Oh, you visited with a friend yesterday. What did you do with this friend? Or what do you like about this person? You had a good lunch today. What did you have for lunch? What's your favorite food? And try to turn to something positive. And then when you hear them again say something positive, ask them about that. So I think Zig Ziglar did this with his marriage. And he said he wondered if he should leave the marriage, but he thought, wait, let me try this. And every time his wife would do something positive, he would thank her for it and be grateful for it. And pretty soon the marriage turned around and he didn't feel any need to leave the marriage. So we can catch people doing something positive and reinforce that. Try to steer the conversation down a positive track. When we're with a negative person who's criticizing another person, what I've done is say, jump in with something positive that I like about that person. Like if they say, well, they sure have a messy house or a messy yard or something like that, I might say, they've always, yes, and they've always been honest with me and very, always done what they said they were going to do with me. So I have a good experience with that person. And the other person criticizing the other one didn't say another word, because I was sort of showing I want to go down the positive road and track here. I've had people criticize other people to me and gossip and just go off on a rant almost. I know they're discharging and all that, but it keeps the negativity going. So what I've said to this person after trying to be a good listener for them for a long time and realize, this is affecting me, I don't like it, and I don't think it's really helping the other person. It doesn't solve anything, it doesn't change anything when I just sit here and let them rant and rave and I listen. So one time I said to a person doing this, I said, I really don't want to hear this stuff about people. And that person never did that to me again. That was years ago. So that worked. So there's ways to stop, to kind of protect yourself, protect the other person, because I realized that negativity feels bad and it can kind of be contagious. And I didn't want to carry with me that negativity, nor did I want to carry a negative image or picture when I next saw that person, because I know that we're all positive and negative. We all have positive and negative stuff in us. I do, everyone does. So why not focus on the positive? I know I'm working on the negative stuff, and I know other people are too. I hope that they make room for the stuff I'm still working on, the stuff I'm still human, and can focus on my positive. So I assume that, I'm guessing that other people like that too, and I'll try to focus on the positive about them and in them to give them my support toward the positive. So those are things that we can do. But John Maxwell in the book here says, if you know Bob and have a good enough rapport with him, or you have authority over him or something, then you could ask Bob to think before he speaks. And John Maxwell says that acronym can be, think, THINK, could be T for ask yourself, is it true? H, is it helpful? I, is it inspiring? N, is it necessary? And K, is it kind? So that's the think before we speak. Let me check myself before I speak. Let me make sure that what's coming out of my mouth, let me stop for a moment and observe and say, what am I about to say? Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And that spells think. Sometimes I just go down to 3 of them. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And I'll say, sometimes I say, it wasn't even necessary to bring that up or to make that comment. It wasn't necessary, or it wasn't kind. I think I always pass the true test, but is it necessary and is it kind? Could I say it a better way, or not say it at all? Or can I reframe it so that it passes the test? So that's one thing that we can do with negative people. Ask them to think before they speak. Another thing that he suggests is keep Bob away from others. Try to isolate them a little bit, like we're quarantining with the virus, so as not to spread it, because negativity has an effect just as much on our emotions, doesn't it? Even on our emotional health, mental health, and even on our physical health. So try to not give Bob a speaking position or influence over others if you cannot remove him from a group, or you choose not to for some reason. Maybe it's even a family member that you can't remove from the family, right? But see if You can isolate them from others, not expose others as so much to that person's negativity. And then he says, what if you're Bob? And he said, questions to ask ourselves. Do I experience some kind of conflict almost every day? Do people often rub me the wrong way? Do bad things just naturally happen to me? Do I have few friends and wish I had more? Do I always seem to be saying the wrong thing? Could be that I'm Bob. And he tells a story. He said the first thing, you have to admit that you're Bob. We have to admit that we're Bob. And the second is that we want to change. Those are necessary before we do. And he tells a funny story about a lady who was being tried for the murder of her third husband. And the attorney asked her, well, how did your first husband die? And she said, mushroom poisoning. How did your second husband die? He died of mushroom poisoning too. Third guy said, he died of a concussion. The attorney said, how'd that happen? She goes, he wouldn't eat the mushrooms. So, sometimes there's a pattern there. Sometimes we don't want to look at it. Now, personally, I find that I am Bob every time that I have a reaction to somebody. Every time I don't like what that person did, I feel angry or I feel bothered by it. It wakes me up in the night. It's going through my mind, keeps sticking with me. Why do they do that? I wish they wouldn't do that. My life would be better. My life would be fine if that person just didn't do that. If I have a reaction, an emotional reaction, it gets me, am I judging them, and it affects me, I can guarantee that trait is in me too. And I hate to admit that because then I have to look at me and not them. That's uncomfortable. So then I'd rather point outside and put the blame outside myself. Right? So they always say, if I point at somebody, it's 3 fingers of pointing back at me. Right? If I point the finger at somebody, I got 3 or more fingers pointing back at me. And to take a look. But it's not easy because I'm sure that this time it's that person, not me. But usually if I wait a few days and I'm honest with myself, then it comes kind of trickling through that, oh yeah, I criticize people too, or I'm hard to live with too in that way, or I judge people too. And it's hard for me to see unless I have good self-esteem. The reason I think that I don't want to look at those things in myself is because I might then feel bad about myself. If I admit those things, I might feel bad because that's in me and maybe I'll have a hard time loving myself. So it takes a lot of self-esteem to be able to do that. Where do we get that? A lot of times from childhood. And this is statistics. John says that studies have shown that the average home, for every positive statement, a child receives 10 negative statements. Whoa. And in schools, it's 7 to 1. And yet, they've proven that it takes 4 positives to counter 1 negative. So you see, we sort of put our children in debt right from the beginning about self-esteem. And no wonder they feel bad about themselves, right? Or feel they're not good enough, don't deserve, or can't do things. They hear all these negative things. I was around someone one time and they said to their grandchild, what's wrong with you? The child tripped on their shoelace or something. What's wrong with you? The child starts asking himself, what's wrong with me? Or believes there's something is. And then when they grow up, they come to me to do inner child work and fix that negative programming, which I do as an inner child therapist and holistic health practitioner for over 30 years, counselor, teacher, and doing my own personal growth work because I found that I can't lead someone else where I have not gone myself, done my own work. I cannot help someone else unless I've done my own work. And that is what inspired me and gave me the courage to do my own work and be honest and look at myself as much as I have so far to be able to help other people. I didn't do it just for me, but all the hundreds of people that I would be helping when I went through my intense Fisher-Hoffman process, ropes course, and all the other intense clearings that I did at Body Mind College, where I ended up teaching and facilitating group processes for 15 years before I brought this work to network marketers. Well, you guys are my hero. I'm a dedicated generic network marketing coach right now, and for the rest of my life I will be. But that was my motivation to do my own work, is all the people that I'm going to be helping, not just facing myself for me, but I better be honest and have courage to change myself for all the people that I will be helping. And so I've had the fortune to do that. But I'm still a work in progress, still working on me. Always will. Always the next step to take. And it also keeps me humble because I see things. But then I have to increase my self-esteem and love myself and realize I am loved by the divine and other people that make room for my humannesses as I learn, and that I make room for theirs. Even for Bob. Even though I might have to protect myself from him, set a boundary, say I don't want to hear this, or protect him, other people from him too, but I can still recognize Bob's value. There's good points in every person, aren't there? So we can think before we speak. Was this helpful today? I'd love to hear your viewpoints in the comments. I'd love to hear any takeaways that you have, any stories or tips that you have that can help me to bring this more out to people. Any questions that you have, please leave them in the comments. Let's keep a dialogue going. And if you know someone who can benefit from this, I love if you share. Thank you so much for being here. I love you, and let's love ourselves and love others and make the world a little bit better place. Okay, everyone, take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.